Welcome, everyone, to the situation on college campuses. J Street U students discuss anti-war protests. I'm Sam Berkman, J Street's National Director of Communal Relations, and we are honored to be joined by four incredible J Street U student leaders who will share with us about the experience that they are having as college students right now in the spaces that are seemingly shrinking, humanization, and growing tension. Many of us here have witnessed appalling scenes of antisemitism, disturbing acts of police brutality against peaceful demonstrators, and raging hostility between protesters and counter-protesters. And today's discussion is meant to cut through that noise, of which there has been plenty, and hear directly from our student leaders navigating these difficult climates on their respective campuses. Before we get started, a couple of technology notes. First, there is a Q&A feature at the bottom of your screens to ask our student panelists the questions. We will do our best to get to as many of those as possible. And today's discussion will be recorded and available to watch and reshare afterward. So with that, let me introduce our speakers. We have Lauren Haines, who is a junior at the University of Michigan and serves as president of J Street U's national board. She has been involved in J Street U since stepping foot on her campus freshman year. Henry Sears is a senior at Columbia University, where he serves as one of the co-presidents of J Street U. Previously, Henry worked with the Paris Center for Peace and Innovation, a prominent peace-building and coexistence organization in Israel. Rachel Burnett is a senior and chapter president for J Street U at UCLA, as well as J Street U's National Communications Committee chair. Outside of J Street U, she interns at Nexus Project, an initiative focused on parsing out the relationship between criticism of Israel and anti-Semitism. Meirav Solomon is a sophomore at Tufts University, where she leads her J Street U chapter and serves on the J Street U National Communications Committee. She is a daughter of two rabbis and an alum of the dialogue program Seeds of Peace. Thank you all for joining us during what is both a stressful moment politically on campus, to say the least, and academically as we near the end of the school year. So before we get into the meat of it all, I wanted to start off just by seeing how you all are doing, given some of the scenes and events happening on your campuses. Certainly we saw last night some of these come to a head, both on Columbia campus and UCLA. And so wanted just to check in with you all in terms of what it's like to be a college student at this present moment. Lauren, you want to give it a start?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren. Personally, I'm okay right now. I was actually able to leave campus yesterday. I just finished my last final. The Michigan school year ends really early, but I couldn't wait to get off campus, honestly, even though I love my school. I have a great life there, but the atmosphere is just so volatile. And especially after what happened last night at UCLA and Columbia, I'm really heartbroken right now that this situation has ended up like it has.
Thanks for sharing. Henry, let's go to you next. How are you doing?
Hi everyone, I'm Henry, and I would say I'm like physically fine, but very overwhelmed, especially with all the scenes that we saw coming out of Columbia last night after the escalation of the protest. That no, it's been a lot. I could hear the protest from my apartment chanting at the NYPD. So it's been a lot, but I'm doing fine.
Thanks for sharing. Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I also, fortunately, I'm physically okay. I, got maybe an hour or so sleep last night, just, listening to the news. I could hear the helicopters and everything from my apartment. And, I was texting all of my friends who I knew at the encampment, people who were at the scene reporting live, my people who I know who are reporters at the Daily Bruin, because also reporters at the Daily Bruin were assaulted last night, as well as protesters. And so, yeah, I'm just pretty horrified and disturbed by what happened last night. And also just, the way in which people have chosen to express themselves throughout the past 7 months and throughout these protests just in general has been alarming and upsetting.
Yeah, I think we can all understand that. Meirav, how are you?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Meirav. And I would say I'm doing okay. I want to echo everything that was said by Henry and Rachel and Lauren, and I'm so inspired by their leadership on their own campuses. Um, Tufts has been pretty quiet so far. Our encampment has been up for around 3 weeks. It started a long time before much of the media attention was on a lot of these encampments. Last night, we were a little bit worried about some police presence as a no trespass order was put out by the Tufts administration. But so far, no police brutality on our campus, and the protests haven't escalated to that point, luckily. But personally, I would say I'm definitely heartbroken. I share with Lauren in that I'm heartbroken that it had to get to this point. Um, and as somebody who centers a lot of their work in dialogue, it makes me really sad that we're not able to do that anymore, and that doesn't seem like a viable option for a lot of people on campus in order to progress our issues and talk to each other.
Appreciate you all sharing. I wanted to take a step back, and although we've seen protests and the issues come to a head in the past couple of weeks or so, this is not new for many of you. This has been going on, at least in the intensity, I would say, since October 7th, but certainly as members of J Street U, I think you're no strangers to being in the middle of this debate on campus where this issue plays more prominently. And I would say that you're probably in the front lines of our movements. And so I just wanted to get a sense of how your chapters have been responding to the events at play in Israel and the West Bank and Gaza since October 7th. Maybe we'll go back the other way. Meirav, you want to start?
Sure. I've been really proud of my J Street U chapter. We have dealt with some of the hardest situations that you ever have to deal with as a college student working on this issue. And I think we've come at them with empathy, with vulnerability, with radical compassion. And that's really been why we've been able to succeed in building such an incredible community this past year. It's one of the things that I'm most proud of. We were able to meet with Congress members at the very beginning of the year after October 7th to talk about what we cared about, to talk about caring about the dignity of Israelis and Palestinians, and to be able to be heard from them was really incredible. We had a screening of Israelism at the beginning of the year that was attended by members of Friends of Israel, of Students for Justice in Palestine, and members of J Street, which seems like a crazy thing to say now and the situation that we're in, but that did happen this past year. I was most recently able to engage in a Jewish-Muslim dialogue put on by the Interfaith Chaplaincy at Tufts, which was truly incredible last week. And I do think there have been some really incredible wins on by J Street U chapters and by our leaders that you can see on the Zoom call today this past year that I'm really proud of.
Rachel, what's been UCLA's response from J Street U?
Yeah, so our encampment was erected on Thursday, and the Wednesday night we had a Seder. And we had maybe 15 J Street U students. We read from a Haggadah supplement compiled by Halachic Left, All That's Left, and Hasmol HaEmuni, and we read from that, which was really powerful. We had some really meaningful discussions. Everyone made really great food. And so we didn't know, we figured that we would have an encampment, in the near future. We didn't know it would be the next morning, but I think it gave us, this realization that there is a community on campus who isn't, so extremely polarized in one direction or the other. And, I think that we try to also cultivate a space where maybe we don't 100% agree on everything all of the time, but people feel safe and people feel heard, and we're united by our belief in the sanctity and dignity of all human life, whether Israeli, Palestinian, Jewish, Arab, Muslim, all students, no matter what their ideologies are. And so I think being able to hold spaces like that has been really meaningful, and knowing that there is a community on campus.
Lauren, I wanted to turn to you. You are the president of the JSU National Board, and I would love to hear just your reflections on what it's like to lead a pro-Israel, anti-occupation movement at this moment.
Yeah, well, it's really hard to lead this movement. It is very, I think, can be very tiring, and I think that all the other panelists on this call could agree that we feel like we're constantly trying to defend one group, or both groups, but one at a time. So, for example, if we're within our halals, we're trying to stand up for Palestinians, and then when we walk by the encampments on our campuses, we're trying to stand up for Israelis. So it's exhausting, honestly, to try to balance both of those and make sure that the voice of humanity is heard. I think it's really important, and it's involved a lot of like one-on-one conversations with students from all schools, but it's a really difficult balance.
Thank you for that. Henry, Columbia has very much been at the epicenter of all this activity and these protests. Can you just give us a sense of what's been going on campus? Certainly, we all saw on the news last night some of these interactions with police coming to a head. I just wanted to hear what your experience has been.
Yeah, so the first encampment on Columbia's campus was set up exactly 2 weeks ago, and then was cleared by NYPD the next day, and 108 students were arrested. So that, in my opinion, really escalated tensions, because that brought outside protesters to campus who screamed horrible things at Jewish students, like, "We want October 7th to happen again." And just harass people who were just wearing Stars of David or wearing a kippah. So that's really unacceptable. But then we've also seen on the other side people demonize all of the protesters, especially the students, by saying that they are all Hamas, or they are all terrorists, or the situation on Columbia's campus is like the situation in Germany in 1938. And none of that is true. We need to have room for free speech and peaceful protest. And unfortunately, what we saw on Tuesday was the peaceful protest that was at the encampment, even though I profoundly disagree with much of what they say. It was peaceful, and then when they occupied Hamilton Hall, it transitioned from that, and it was no longer peaceful. So Columbia brought in the NYPD again last night. We were under a shelter-in-place order and under risk of disciplinary action if we left our house. So currently, I think over 200 people have been arrested as of last night, and I am not allowed to go onto campus. No student who lives off campus can go on. So yeah, that's pretty much a summary of what's been happening. But also, students have lost so much trust in the administration, especially because of the NYPD being brought in. And then there's been no communication. For example, our final exams are coming up, and the libraries are all off limits to all students. So I would say we're just in a very difficult time right now. And I've seen that a lot of people in the questions are saying that it's unclear to them what's happening. It's also unclear to me. Even though I live 2 blocks off campus, I don't know what's happening.
Thanks for sharing that. And I know we're all thinking about you and your fellow students who are dealing with this unimaginable moments on campus. Rachel, I wanted to turn to you now, with unfortunately UCLA now getting some more prominence in the news too, and see if you can tell us what's been happening, your view on what both sides of the different protests and counter protests are standing for, and what you and J Street U are standing for in this moment as well.
Yeah, I just want to quickly clarify some things in the chat. The Seder that was hosted was done at a board member's apartment, so it wasn't done in connection with the encampment. It was done before the encampment was arrested, and it was just, something to build our community. So the encampment was erected Thursday, and it was, there was chanting, but other than that, it felt pretty much like a regular protest on campus. There were counter protesters, but generally things were pretty tame between them. And each day things have sort of escalated. Counter protesters, on Friday or Saturday, it's been clear from the encampment in their communications that someone in there has a fatal allergy to bananas, and so counter protesters have been bringing bananas, throwing bananas into the encampment, and things like that. I saw on Friday someone had a Kach flag, which is the flag of Mir Kahana, and that flag was brought again on Sunday's demonstration, which was organized by outside groups. They raised, I think, like $70,000, and had a massive screen. Jonathan Greenblatt spoke. A few other, the head of the IAC spoke, and things got, pretty heated. There were like a few skirmishes. I was there with about 24 people from Standing Together LA, and when I was part of this group, I was holding a sign that said "Ceasefire and hostage deal now." And I was spat on and told I should have been slaughtered in the kibbutzim on October 7th by a pro-Israel protester. I was told many times, that I wasn't Jewish, I was a capo, that kind of thing. And so there was definitely a lot of hostility and aggression. And then on Monday and Tuesday, the screen has remained on campus, and a different anonymous outside group has been blasting footage of October 7th towards the encampment, which in my opinion is completely horrific and inappropriate. Their argument is like, students are denying the atrocities and they need to know what they're supporting, but that's not how education works. First of all, it's completely traumatizing for students to walk by who haven't consented to these footage. My Israeli American friends, multiple, have like texted me and been like, this is so distressing, to see my people's, bodies. It's, so I think that is pretty horrific. And that's just also, you don't educate people by forcibly making them watch horrific footage. So that has been a very upsetting display on campus. And then of course, last night, so a large group of counter protesting, pro-Israel vigilantes came onto campus. Fireworks were thrown into the encampment, as was bear mace, pepper spray. People were assaulted. And the police didn't come for hours. And whereas I think what my understanding is from Columbia, the police has been far too heavy-handed. It seems to me that there's been no accountability, and so it's sort of allowed like a situation of anarchy at UCLA on campus. And there were no arrests of like anyone who perpetrated violence last night, which to me is so insane. The fact that 200 students were arrested at Columbia for a mostly peaceful protest, albeit with upsetting rhetoric, and counter protesters, violently attacked students, and there was not one arrest last night. And the police, I was watching this footage for hours, and the police didn't come for hours, and when they did come, they mostly just stood there. Students went to the hospital. There's a ton of videos of like, blood just everywhere. And I received real-time updates, and a friend of mine, I texted her, she's Palestinian, and I knew she was in the encampments, and I was like, are you okay? She's like, oh, I'm like totally fine. I only got maced a little bit. So that was sort of the situation on campus last night.
It was certainly troubling to see some of the footage that reached all of us around the country. So I see some of the questions in the chat, and so I want to see if I can combine some of them together. And Meirav, this one's for you. You are a member of JCU's National Communications Committee, and wanted to get a sense from you on what you think in the media right now it might be lost or is not being accurately conveyed. And if in answering that, if you could think about any student-to-student anti-Semitism, either that you've experienced or that you've heard from others. People are trying to get a sense of how much of the worst actions, behavior, rhetoric is coming from students themselves versus outside agitators.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, as proudly conservative Jewish student at Tufts, somebody who is in Arabic classes, studies Middle East studies at Tufts University, and is in classes with Arab, Palestinian, Muslim students pretty much all the time. I did not feel unsafe on my campus until maybe last night when I heard about the threat of police brutality on our campus towards the peaceful protests. I'll say student-to-student anti-Semitism is completely valid, and it has happened at Tufts. Either I've been the recipient of it, or I know other people who have been the recipient of it. There is definitely a line that needs to be drawn between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. But I will say that anti-Semitism is real. It is on college campuses. Islamophobia is real. It has been increasing at the same way that anti-Semitism has also been increasing on college campuses. I will say that outside actors have played a really destructive role in increasing this kind of tension and this kind of hate speech on campus. A lot of different groups, such as Jubilong early on this past year with doxing trucks, as well as billboards saying just because you're a cultural Jew doesn't mean that you'll be saved, are quite threatening and make me feel unsafe. And I think any Jew would feel unsafe by that kind of rhetoric. Outside actors have also been manipulating this situation in order to progress their own issues, which are much more long-term and don't conclude in the peace and dignity for Israeli Palestinians that we're looking for. So I'll talk a little bit more about the media because this kind of connects here. So I think the first thing that the media is really missing about this is not to be egotistical or narcissistic, but I think it's missing us. I think it's talking to all of the most extremist aspects of all of these demonstrations, and nobody's talking to those of us who have been working on dialogue, who've been working on coalition building, who've been working on community building and engaging peacefully with each other for much long before October 7th, but even since October 7th. They're talking to the most extreme aspects of all of these demonstrations and also all these organizations. And because of that, nobody's really getting anywhere. And that makes sense because the media does in some ways profit off of presenting a black and white narrative. And nuance isn't as, I guess, sexy as it is to be on one team or the other. But the issue with that is that nuance is how we get through this, and nuances and understanding nuance and empathizing with each other is truly how I believe we solve this conflict once and for all. The second thing that the media is missing is that we need to talk about student safety. Jewish students are feeling what Black and Brown students and Indigenous students and undocumented students and Palestinian and Muslim students have been feeling for a very long time, which is unsafe on their college campuses, whether because of other students' behaviors or because of their administration's behaviors. Most students, I would say, feel unsafe being themselves and practicing their constitutionally protected rights on campus. And that is incredibly alarming. And the media is only talking about the student safety of Jewish students right now, which is important, and that's completely valid. But we need to be talking about the safety of all students, regardless of their views on Israel-Palestine. We all deserve to have the right to free expression of our religion, free expression in general, and also our rights to peaceful protest and our rights to free speech. And I'll conclude my statement by saying the third thing that they're missing, and this is something that may be controversial, I guess, for me to say on my campus, but I'll tell you all, is that I think the demonstrations have really fumbled an opportunity that they had to put a spotlight on what's going on in Gaza. The demonstrations started out and the encampment started out with an intention that I could probably sign on to, which is that we need to be talking about what's going on in Gaza. We need to talk about the humanitarian crisis that's going on in Gaza. We need to focus on what's going on there, and we need to have a ceasefire, and we need to have a bilateral ceasefire that includes a hostage release. They have quickly snowballed into this extremist and let's be honest, not completely peaceful protest operation that has been co-opted by outside actors who only wish to do harm, that has snowballed into this situation where we as students are either taking finals or trying to study, while outside our windows, we are fearing police brutality, even if we're not even at the encampment, even if we're just walking around campus. And this has been really upsetting to me because I know these people who are at the encampment. These people I will be taking a final with next week on Wednesday. I know that they are not, at least the people at Tufts are not anti-Semitic. They do not wish me harm. They're simply trying to exercise their peaceful right to protest. But unfortunately, the encampment movement and these organizations that have co-opted all of these demonstrations to increase tensions, to increase violence, to increase upsetting rhetoric, and yes, anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, have unfortunately made it so these encampments are truly not doing what they wanted to do in the first place, which is to put eyes on Gaza, to put the fact that Gazans are facing famine and are facing incredibly alarming humanitarian crises, and there's still hostages that are stuck over there. I mean, the hostages videos that I saw were incredibly terrifying and horrifying and saddening. And I think that they've really missed an opportunity here to start a really important conversation. And the media has missed an opportunity here to talk to us about what's really going on and to create a productive space for us to actually progress this movement in a path that works towards peace and towards dignity and a just peace for Israelis and Palestinians after October 7th.
Thanks for sharing. I know many of us in the J Street camp can sympathize with the lack of nuance in the media that we try to represent as a movement here. Rachel, I know you wanted to get in briefly as well on this topic.
Yeah. So I, also I'm the National Vice President of Communications, so I definitely have plenty to say about the media. I do want to sort of add on to what Meirav was saying about this notion of Jewish safety. And I think, when I was witnessing the protests and counter protest on Sunday, there was a lot of rhetoric I heard from the IAC, from groups like that, about Jewish safety. And I think that is disingenuous. I think what they're concerned about is Jewish safety of Jews who they agree with. And I think that Jewish safety is a really important conversation that needs to be had. But I think we have to be honest that Jewish safety is not synonymous with the safety of, students who identify as Zionists. This safety of Jewish students who identify with being pro-Israel. I identify with the pro-Israel movement, but there are plenty of Jewish students that don't. There are Jewish students that only want to say positive things about Israel. There are Jewish students that, are involved with JVP. There are Jewish students that don't want to talk about Israel at all. And all of us, we obviously have divergent positions on Israel, but we all deserve protection from anti-Semitism. And it feels like a lot of the groups that are talking about anti-Semitism are only interested in protecting students from anti-Semitism with whom they agree, which I think is really upsetting. And I think, dismissing groups like JVP as, a fringe self-hating minority, I think it's the wrong approach. I don't agree with a lot of what JVP has to say. I have serious issues with their rhetoric and movement, but they're a part of our community and we must embrace and acknowledge them as such. And I also think that even though there absolutely is an anti-Semitism problem in a lot of these protests, I think more accurately, there's a dehumanization of Israelis problem. I think we see anti-Semitism from these protests and statements like, Zionists control the media and things like that. But, we see dehumanization of Israelis, the idea that, there's no Israeli civilians. There was a sign at UCLA that said Israelis are native to hell. And so I think that, a lot of the like discursive conversation about anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism sort of obscures the larger point that there's dehumanization of Israelis that is happening. And whether you want to label that as anti-Semitic or not, it's wrong, it's chauvinistic, it's bigoted, and it needs to be condemned as such. And so I think the discourse can sometimes obscure, the problematizing of what's actually happening.
Thanks for articulating that. Lauren, I wanted to shift to you and ask a question about the demands being made from the protesters. So the media, by and large, has been reporting that these demands are largely akin to what I would say we've generally seen from the BDS movement on campus. Does that seem accurate to you at all? I mean, does the debate seem to have moved from being specifically focused on achieving a ceasefire in this current war to something larger? And based off your answer on that, how is JSU responding to these demands?
Yeah, I'd like to start off by saying I think a lot of the protesters don't actually know what they're asking for. Their outrage and their horror at what has happened in Gaza is absolutely valid, and they're looking for somewhere to channel that energy. And they see, these encampments and rallies as helping Palestinians directly. I think a lot of the outrage and protests on campuses is their goal is divestment from Israel. And on most campuses, that includes divestment in all forms. So divestment from arms companies and also from Israeli universities and any other academic connections that the university might have in Israel. So I'd say that is relatively synonymous with the BDS movement. It's not the same as just wanting to divest from arms companies that enable human rights violations in Gaza, for example. I think some of these protesters also are calling for something more. And I've seen a lot of signs, at least at the University of Michigan, saying, globalize the Intifada, long live the Intifada. And I, again, think a lot of people don't know what that means. And so I think their intentions aren't bad, but we all know that thousands of innocent people died during the Intifada, and including many, many innocent Palestinians. So there are some people who are calling for, I guess you could categorize it as anarchy, a complete revolution. And then there are some students who just want the lives of Palestinians to improve. They don't want their tuition dollars to be funding human rights violations, and that's absolutely valid. I don't either. So I'd say it's a good mix, and we can't dismiss all of the protesters because some of their claims are actually valid. However, some of them are genuinely calling for violence against Israelis or violence against Zionists on campus. So it's really important to inspect and see what they're actually looking for.
So we've been talking about the demands being made. We've been talking about the counter protests and other people's reactions to what's going on. For the longest time, it has seemed that people on different sides of the ongoing Israel-Palestine debate broadly continue to talk past each other. And I wonder if that is because, in part, we are defining our language differently. And here's what I mean by that. I'm going to share some slides just to get this point across. I think there's some good data here. So a couple of years ago, Professor Meirav did a survey of American Jews and asked them a very basic first question: are you a Zionist? Without providing any definition. And as you can see here, 58% of the respondents said that they identified as a Zionist. And there was a handful of others who did not adopt that position outright. But then Professor Sukharov asked a second question, this time defining Zionism as a feeling of attachment to Israel. And from that, you had 56% saying they definitely were a Zionist and 14% probably. So 70% favorable in terms of identifying as a Zionist. Then she changed the definition again. this time to Zionism being a belief in a Jewish and democratic state. And it went up to 72% between those definitely or probably identifying as a Zionist. And then the last definition she provided was the belief in privileging Jewish rights over non-Jewish rights in Israel. And as you can see there, a whopping 69% of American Jews probably or definitely did not identify as a Zionist. And I bring that up because that seems to be where I think the disconnect is between what we're seeing from protesters and those who are pushing for Palestinian rights, some who identify as anti-Zionists, and those who are more pro-Israel and not being able to sit down and have those conversations and talking past each other. So I'm curious, Henry, I'll start with you. If you feel that data is accurate and you feel like that plays into the discourse or lack thereof on campus with these issues.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel like that is accurate. People have many different things that they think Zionism means. Like when I say I'm a Zionist, I mean that I support a two-state solution with Israel existing next to an independent state of Palestine in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. However, when many of these protesters say Zionist, I think they mean someone who likes seeing the oppression of Palestinians, wants Israel to be in total control, etc. So I feel like part of the reason that the rhetoric on campus is so polarized is that we can't agree on what this actually means. And by that, they say terms, for example, at the protests that people who consider themselves Zionists find threatening, like Zionists off our campus. Like, is that just talking to the people who believe that there should be a one-state solution with total Israeli control and no voting rights for Palestinians? Or is that talking to people who support a two-state solution and an end to the occupation? So I would say that it's just we cannot agree on what our terms mean. So I feel like people use Zionist just in a way that isn't helping anyone, whether it's on the pro-Palestine side or the pro-Israel side. So I think this makes it really important to have one-on-one discussions, because I've noticed even when I've had conversations with people who are like, oh, I hate Zionists, and then I talk to them and we're not super far apart in wanting a solution that ensures the dignity of both Israelis and Palestinians. Yes, of course, there are more extreme views, but I would say that we really need to foster these one-on-one conversations in order to make any change on our college campuses.
I appreciate that, the response. Lauren, taking that question a step further, whether people have different views on what Zionism is. Certainly we've seen play out with these protests, and then also taken into more of a national conversation that's starting to take place in Congress as well. The conflation of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. And J Street continues to make that distinguish between the two. We do not inherently believe that all anti-Zionism is anti-Semitic. And the conversation has grown in prominence with the protests. And I'm curious how you've seen anti-Zionism morph into anti-Semitism. And what do you think people misunderstand about the two?
Yeah, I think this is probably the first year on campus that I have seen anti-Zionism morph into anti-Semitism. I have Jewish friends who are anti-Zionist and also Jewish friends who are Zionist or would identify as Zionists. And I think that a lot of people have no idea what Zionism is. A lot of people who are perhaps don't have any Jewish friends or any friends who have any attachment to Israel believe that it's some sort of fringe ideology, like this radical ideology within the Jewish community that only a few people believe, when in reality, at least half of the American Jewish community identifies as Zionists. And of course, we have very different definitions for what that means. But that is really what concerns me when people on campus say Zionists off our campus. I wish death upon Zionists, which is something that was said on our campus by a prominent student leader who, to my knowledge, faced little repercussions for that. So that's what's incredibly concerning to me. People don't know what Zionism is. They denounce anyone who has any connection to Israel whatsoever, even if it's someone like me who's incredibly critical of the Israeli government and has been for years. So we're definitely seeing that line being crossed. And I think what makes this anti-Semitism so hard to combat, I think it's the fault of the right wing and organizations like the Anti-Defamation League that tend to categorize all pro-Palestine and all anti-Zionist protests as inherently anti-Semitic. So people who are on those sides, on the pro-Palestine side, when they see that they're being silenced by the right wing, they just see that as like opposition rather than calling out hate speech. And so that makes it so incredibly difficult for Jewish students to call out legitimate instances of anti-Semitism. At the University of Michigan, our Hillel was vandalized several times within the past few months with swastikas and with posters saying Zionism is Nazism, et cetera. And I know that in the Ann Arbor community, there have been multiple protests at synagogues saying things along the same line. So I think we need to make clear that not all anti-Zionism is anti-Semitic, but we need to remedy the fact that a lot of these establishment organizations on the right wing have created this problem for Jewish students, even though they claim to help Jewish students. And now we can't actually call out anti-Semitism when it exists.
Hey, Rob and Rachel, I want to ask you both to answer this next question that Lauren started to touch on. In recent weeks, certainly we've seen outside groups trying to impose their agendas on these protests and on campus. Who have you felt supported by on campus in terms of supporting you and being allies in your efforts? Meirav, let's start with you and then we'll go to Rachel.
Sure. I think it's really saddening that I have to, say the things that I'm about to say. I have not felt supported by the traditional institutions, Jewish institutions that are on our campus that should be supporting me, that my parents pay tuition so that they support me. I have not felt supported by my Hillel. It has not been a safe space for me since October 7th. I have not felt supported by the ADL, a group that is supposedly supposed to be fighting for me. Tufts was recently given an F on their report card, which I think is vastly detached from the reality of what it is to be a Tufts student on our campus right now. I know for a fact they didn't talk to any Tufts students before making that distinction, and that's really troubling to me. So I don't really feel supported by many traditional Jewish organizations that I was really hoping would be supportive of me. Really, the only organization that I can point to is J Street U that's been supportive towards me. I think individual relationships, I've told this story multiple times, but the day after October 7th, or the first day of school after October 7th, I was heading into my Arabic class, and I was really worried about what was going to happen because a lot of the people in my Arabic class are themselves Palestinian, or a couple of them are from Gaza. And I was pretty worried. I didn't know what was going to happen. I'm the only Jewish student there. And the first thing that happened was one of my Gazan classmates asked me how I was doing. And that for me was like, okay, we're back to being grounded in humanity. This isn't about, all the tsuris that's going on here. It's about real human lives, it's about each other, and it's about caring about each other. I felt more safe in my Arabic class, honestly, to be myself, to be my full Jewish self, to be totally honest, than I really have around most traditional Jewish institutions on campus and off. And while that's really saddening, it's also allowed me to create my own Jewish communities that do feel safe and that do feel encouraging and engaging, especially as a part of J Street U.
Rachel.
Yeah, I mean, I also have had a challenging time, I think, being supported by mainstream Jewish institutional spaces because of where I stand on this issue, which has been pretty disheartening. And I do think outside of that, though, I have been able to find a lot of support. I have some incredible professors at UCLA who I'm a Middle East Studies major, and I've been so fortunate to take their classes and, be able to spend time like picking their brains outside of class. So they have just been so incredible. I also have, of course, the wonderful J Street U community, all of the incredible J Street staff who, are just, yeah, all incredible. And then also, I'm very involved with Standing Together LA. And so I think having a binational space, coming together, with, Jews and Palestinians, who, are shared in our values, and having, Palestinian friends who I can connect with has been something that's been like incredibly healing for me. Knowing that, the voices of the extremists who claim to represent Jews and claim to represent Palestinians, like, are not, you know, they're not actually, they're hurting us more than they're helping us. And so I think being able to have that kind of space where we can talk about that together, for me, has been just incredibly supportive and meaningful.
Thank you both for that. But I want to make sure I ask this next question. I think it's be very helpful to get all of your perspectives on this. One of the questions in the chat was for a high school junior who is thinking about where they're going to college. What advice do you have on how they should go about that search in terms of visiting campuses and everything else that's being affected by current events? Henry, you want to start?
Sure. So I know the news cycle coming out of Columbia is bad right now, but it's kind of always been bad. Like, people have been saying for the past couple of years that this is the most dangerous place for Jewish students in America, when in reality, we have a 25% Jewish population, at least undergraduate at Columbia. We have a 7-story Hillel building, which is a center for Jewish life on campus. And there are so many opportunities within the Jewish community here. So I would say that, like, just actually talk to Jewish students from a wide variety of perspectives to hear about what's going on campus. Don't just read the media to judge a school, because that will end up distorting your perspective on everywhere. And at least I went to a listening session with the Columbia Task Force on Antisemitism a couple weeks ago. And what the professor who's leading it said is that we can either choose to give up our seats at the table, and at least at Columbia, there will be, and at all of the schools that the panelists go to, there will be thousands of students who will eagerly take that seat at the table, or we can push back, fight back, and let them know that that even though there is a lot of anti-Semitism on our campus at this moment, Jewish students are not going anywhere. We're not going to back down. We are here, and we need to normalize us being here as Jewish students, and us being here as Jewish students who have empathy and compassion and dialogue with Palestinian students as well. So we can't fall into this right-wing trap of campus is unsafe for all Jewish students. We need to abandon it.
Well said. Meirav, please.
I wanted to jump in here to also say that I think there's a real difference between being unsafe and being uncomfortable. College, and I've written a couple op-eds on this if you'd like to check them out. College is a place where we're supposed to confront our preconceived notions. We're supposed to learn from each other. We're supposed to sit in really uncomfortable positions where we have to really figure out what are our morals, what are our values, and to talk with people about these in new ways and new perspectives, and really learn from each other. Obviously, there's a huge difference between being physically unsafe and emotionally unsafe and being uncomfortable. But I think that it's so important that, any college you're going to go to, hopefully, if they're doing their jobs correctly, they're going to challenge you. They're going to push you to meet new people and to engage with new ideas. And that isn't necessarily unsafe. I think that it's important. It's a college's jobs to do so. I also want to say that what Henry said was completely correct in talking to people one-on-one and talking to people across the spectrum. I'd also say that I feel very proud and very safe on my college campus. I mean, if you take the encampments and put them aside, especially at Tufts University, I'm able to do this because it's not as much of a tense situation. I understand it's different, obviously, at other colleges. But I can walk outside of my dorm. I can celebrate Pesach. I can celebrate all of the holidays and all of these things. And I feel so proud and just love being a Jew here. I really do. Boston's really cool to be it's a great place to be a Jew. If you ever want to visit Tufts, I'd be happy to give you a tour. Don't be scared. Reach out to people, talk to people one-on-one, and get ready to be uncomfortable. That's college. It's a time to learn.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to take our last question to hopefully for most of those in our audience to ask for you to give us advice on what we can do. I think so many of us want to be there to support students and at the same time are sensitive to not wanting to add pressure, not wanting to impose ourselves into the campus discussions that are better left to the students and their administrations as well. So what can we as a J Street community do to support all of you? Maybe Rachel will start with you, and Lauren, we can end with you.
Yeah, I mean, just talking to students in general is always a good strategy. Talking to students who, you agree with, talking to students who you don't, because, there's a lot of demonization of, I think, students of some groups. And so when you talk to students, most of the time you're going to realize most students are reasonable and thoughtful individuals. And I think when you see sensationalist media headlines, I think before you share. And I've had, there's this one video that's gone viral from UCLA of like Jewish students aren't being allowed to walk somewhere. And I that's not accurate to what's happening. And so I think just thinking, before you share things, check in with students of like, hey, is this accurate to your experience? What's been going on here? And then also recognize, there's no such thing as a universal Jewish experience. So, when you're talking about Jewish safety, when you're talking about Jewish students, that is a very broad and wide spectrum. So recognize, who are you centering in that conversation? And so I think it's okay, like, to center certain, if you believe in J Street U's values, like, I think it's okay to center J Street U students, but I think it's also important to like be transparent about, the diversity of the Jewish community on campus and that we're not a monolith.
Lauren, how can we best support you?
I'd absolutely love to echo what Rachel said, help uplift student voices. The media, as also Meirav said, does not profit off of nuance, and that's a problem, and we need your help to help uplift our voices and the voices of people on our campuses, because the news gets it wrong, and a lot of the people who write stories and tweets about what happens on campus are old and haven't actually stepped foot on a college campus in years. In terms of actual ideology, something that I've been thinking about a lot is promoting the idea that you can stand up for Palestinians and call out anti-Semitism at the exact same time. In fact, you should, because they're both tied to the same string of hate. And I think that's something that gets lost a lot. I know at J Street U, we've been trying to call out the police brutality we've been seeing on campuses and also the horrific anti-Semitism. And we need to make clear to the world that multiple things can be bad at the same time, multiple things can be true. And we need to call out all that we're seeing, all of the horrible things that we're seeing, and not just one. And again, just listen to students from all perspectives. Try to visit a college campus, but maybe don't try to get involved in their protests, and just try to sit down and listen to students.
Thank you for that, and thank you all. I want to take a moment to thank all of our listeners and those who have been watching for everything you do in support of J Street and our mission. Certainly, I think we are all in agreement that our J Street U students are not only incredibly articulate and impressive, but are very much on the front lines. And we feel, as challenging as this moment is, we feel very hopeful for our future and the pro-Israel, pro-peace, pro-democracy movement moving into your hands. I want to thank also our J Street U staff who are in day-to-day contact with our students and give them the support that they need. And finally, thank you to all of you and to your chapters and your fellow J Street U students. As I said, you are very much on the front lines and we see that. And we appreciate everything you're doing in this moment to represent our values, and appreciate you taking the time in this stressful moment, and wishing you all the best on final exams. All right, thanks everyone, take care.